Hello guys, today I will actually try to show you how to configure high availability in version 11, Big IP LTM. This is pretty much similar in any other versions of version 11, version 11.1 to 4. You would find that the whole concept is the same. Okay, I think that I'm not trying to log in with the right credentials. Okay. Okay. Just logging into the SSH. Okay, SSH is ready. All right. So in version 11, while comparing to version 10, there are many different changes. It's, I would say, completely different in version 10 and version 11 how you configure high availability. So in version 11, the one thing in it, it's a prerequisite. So you need to have a high dedicated VLAN for high availability. So these units that I have here, so one unit is, I will call it as unit 1. So this host name you will differentiate this by 11.4a and the another unit 11.4b. Both are actually using installed 11.4.1 and hotfix 2, both running the same version. So I got like 3 VLANs. One is internal VLAN, another one external VLAN, and a high availability VLAN. In both the units, it's the same. I already configured it. And as I mentioned before, you must have a dedicated VLAN for HA. Yeah. So you must have. I already created that. So I'll go to self-IP site. I haven't configured an IP address for that VLAN. We will configure it together. But however, I already got self-IP addresses for external and internal VLAN. Right. Let's create an IP address for that VLAN. VLAN. I'll just name it. Now I'll mention it's HA IP. So we already created the VLAN. So the IP address, you could pretty much give any. So since it is a dedicated VLAN, so I assume that you will not have any IP conflicts in this VLAN. And again, another thing is when you actually use a dedicated VLAN, it's actually, I personally recommend to dedicate that VLAN on a dedicated interface too, and connect it using a cable, a network cable on one unit and another unit. So if you're using only 2 units in a high availability, use a cable directly to connect both. But however, if you have more than 2 units, in that case, yeah, you may need to use a switch. Otherwise, it would look like a mess to connect everywhere. Mesh network, not mess. Yeah. So that if you have only 2 units, I recommend just to use a network cable. The reason is just to avoid the point of failures. What happens if the switch reboots? The both units will lose the connectivity. So that's why I actually highly recommend to use a single cable, so you would reduce the point of failures. So I just give this IP address so it is easy for me to remember since the prefix here is matches. So, all right, anyway, 255.255.255.255.0, and I'll choose HA VLAN. And here in the port lockdown settings, I will actually use allow default. This is the IP address that the other unit will try to communicate. If I choose none, this unit will refuse all the incoming connections. So I will choose allow default. If you're not comfortable actually leaving allow default, you could Google it and try to find what are the IPs that config-sync and failover uses, not the IPs, I mean the port uses. So that way you could just only allow that particular. You have an option here under port lockdown settings. You could actually choose allow custom, and you could mention only those ports to be open. But in this case, I'll just leave it default, and I don't remember those port numbers. You could just Google it and find in Ask-a-Fi solutions. So, all right, so we got 2 IP address ready. Okay, so this one, this unit 2, the suffix actually ends with 2, and unit 1 suffix ends with 1. So we got the IP address ready. Just to make sure both units can communicate to each other, let me just try to ping. So I'm trying to ping from unit 1 to unit 2. Let me see. Yeah, it's pinging. That's great. Another thing, I'm not a native English speaker. Some of you may find it difficult to understand me, so please pay attention if you want to follow me. So please pay attention. Yeah. So both units have communication. So yeah, I don't bother actually try to ping from the other unit to here. Anyway, send the request and we got the reply back. All right, so we got the IP address ready. So the next thing what you do is you actually go under device management and then go inside devices. So device management, devices. Okay. So in devices, you only see your own device. You won't see the peer device since you haven't actually added anything. So until now, just adding the IP is just a prerequisite. We haven't actually tried to configure high availability yet. So click on devices under device management and then click on your self device. Then go to device connectivity. The top tab, just choose config sync and use the IP address. It's a local IP address as it mentioned. So choose HAVLAN. So you don't have the option to choose management IP address. In version 10, you could actually use management IP address. So here in version 11, config sync, you must have a dedicated VLAN or a TMM IP address to config sync. So just leave it as local. And failover. So that configuration, config sync IP address is only for config sync. This failover is to this is a channel where both the units could actually communicate their heartbeats, tell who is active, who is standby, which traffic group is active on which unit if you have an active scenario. Yeah, here you choose the HAVLAN as well and click on finished. Yep. So we have the HA here, but however, F5 recommends, I have read their solution article, it actually tells to actually add the management IP address as well as in the failover IP address. The reason is, if your unit is rebooting for whatever reason, it could be a planned reboot or an unplanned reboot. So what happens is when the unit comes back up, the Linux comes. So the Linux comes. The management IP address is held by the Linux. So the management IP address comes first, and the high availability daemon also runs in Linux. It comes first. After Linux it comes. So the next thing what happens is the TMM comes. The traffic management microkernel comes. These IP address that we actually, whatever we have in self IP address, these IP address are associated to the TMM, traffic management microkernel. So it would actually take some time to bring this IP address. So if the unit is rebooting and if the unit is coming up, so for the management IP address would come first and the TMM IP address comes next. So that could be like 6-7 seconds different. But by that time, the unit could become active, and the TMM will start listening for, it will start listening and send GR saying that I am listening and send me the traffic here. And after once the TMM comes back, and then it would actually take some time, both of the units to realize both units are active and one needs to go standby, and the system decides which unit will become standby. But however, few seconds, both units could be on active. So those seconds are enough to cause enough traffic interruption. So you need to try to avoid active-active situation as much as possible. So as the FI recommends, I would add management IP address to failover IP address. And if you see here, you have multicast. So these are unicast. You just put the IP address here. So you have multicast as well. You could actually enable this. It's not going to cause anything. But however, in Viprions, it is highly recommended to have this enable. The reason is you may have multiple blades there. And this TMM IP address could be, you may actually trunk it as well. There are different ways to configure, but in Viprions, it is highly recommended to use multicast IP address. So even if one blade is down, if in the primary and the secondary, if the primary blade goes down and it will take the secondary blade needs to come to primary. I mean, I'm not talking about high availability now, it is in the Viprion chassis itself. So it is recommended to enable it. So any of the blade which is actually primary would actually know one unit is went down, one unit is cannot handle the traffic, I need to take over the traffic. So it's highly recommended to enable this in Viprion systems. In other systems, it's up to you. You could actually enable it or do not enable it. It's up to you. But in other devices, management IP address is a must, I would say. And we will do the same here. I'll try to do it as quick as possible. Okay. Then go to failover, and I will just add the HA. Yeah, you can actually see the ports here. It's 1026. So you could actually manually add the ports in the self IP address if you want. Yeah, and I'll enable the multicast as well. Yeah, config is not showing what port it is using, but I'm sure that if you Google it, you will find it. Okay, so both the units actually we configured saying that these are the IP address used for that device to these IP address will listen and it will actually communicate to the other device using these IP addresses. Yeah, so we configured that. So the next thing what we need to do is we need to add the other unit here. So if you're in a production and if you're trying to bring, so for example, if you have one standalone unit and it is handling the traffic and you decided after say like 3 or 6 months, you decided you want a high availability. So if you're trying to bring the other unit here, so I would actually recommend you to, once you configure the devices, the next thing before you add the device to one device, you would better to bring the new device which has the least configuration or no configuration. I mean, of course, you need to have all the base configuration, self IP address, and the VLANs configured already. One thing is you need to make sure that the unit is offline just to avoid any unwanted failovers. So the way how you do it is like you go to the device which has the least configuration or no configuration and click on the device. So devices, then device, and if you scroll down, you will find force offline. So this unit will become offline so that you can be sure that this unit is not going to take over the traffic when you configure the HA. However, this may not be the same case for VCMP guest. I mean, I hope you know that what is a VCMP and what is a VCMP host and guest. So it's just a virtual editions of running multiple big IPs in a big IPs in higher hardware platforms like Viprion or 4200. Yeah, those platforms. If you actually in VCMP guest, only in the guest, if you actually try to make it force offline, your management IP address, you would be able to access it, but however, still all the self IP address, that is a TMM IP address, those interface would be down. This is what I noticed in many version 11. They may actually change this behavior later. I'm not sure, but still now that is what I noticed. And if you actually make it force offline in VCMP guest, all the self IPs are down. So you just need to know that. So if you try to ping and test the connectivity, so it won't ping in VCMP guest. But if you're not using VCMP, that's fine. Ignore what I said about TMM and these IP addresses just now. So you just feel free to bring it force offline. In other than all VC, except VCMP guest, even if you bring force offline, you would still able to ping the TMM IP addresses. So for us, I will actually do not bother to bring this unit offline because I don't have any configuration. If you go to virtual server or anything, I don't have any configuration. This is almost brand new. Yeah, these are actually not any hardware platforms. These are virtual editions, but it's the same. The virtual edition or the configuration is the same in virtual edition and in hardware platforms. So okay. So I will just make a note what are the things that we did. We just assigned IP address, assigned IP to HA VLAN, add HA self IP as config sync IP. Add HA IP. Just put here also HA IP. So we're not going to use any floating IPs for HA. Management IP as well. As I said, it is highly recommended to use management IP as well in the failover, so that way actually you try to reduce the point of failures. So you need to try to avoid active-active scenarios as much as possible. And or you can have multicast enabled. Yeah, so that's all we did now. So the next thing what we do is we will actually try to add one of the device to the other device. So just adding one device. So I'll just go to what you need to go is go under device management, click on device first. You could use this navigation bar to go to peer list, or you could just click here and go to the tab and choose peer list. Then I click on add here. This is where we are going to add the peer unit here. So you need to enter the device IP address. That is a management IP address. So I'll just copy this and put your administrator credentials. Okay, so here you could actually see the other unit's name, 114B. So that is that unit's name. So that way you could confirm that you're actually adding the right device. I'll just click on finish. So when you do that, actually, it will tell the other device to add this device as well. So it will, yep. So now actually it is actually created, and it says actually this, if you noticed before, it actually went to standby to in sync. Previously it was saying standby. But however, let me go to the other device. I'll show something interesting. It says in sync, and this unit actually says active, and this unit says active as well. What's the reason? The reason is we don't have a device group yet. So even after adding the other unit, you still need to add a device group to tell what are the units that will be in the same device group. And also to make sure that the other unit is here. If you go under device management devices, you would see two devices. So you see two devices, and if you go there, and you will find the same. So you see two devices. So yeah, now we need to create device group. And the name, you could give pretty much any name. I think that it cannot start with it cannot start with numbers. I don't know why. And then this group type, it is by default sync only. You need to choose sync failover. So in version 10, you might have used a hardware failover cable to actually tell which unit is standby and which unit is active. In version 11, they actually tried to remove the hardware failover cable. The reason is in version 11 you can have more than two devices in a cluster. You can have, for example, say you can have 5 devices, and say for instance 5 devices are handling 4 websites. So you can just have one device as standby, and you could actually, if any one of the device fails, the other unit will take care of whichever is in standby. Even you can have all the units in active and 5 devices inactive, and if one unit actually goes down, the unit which handling the lower traffic could take over as well. So yeah, so that way actually, so that's the reason you cannot use hardware failover cable. So since you have only 2 ends, so if you have more than 2 devices, there is no way you can actually connect 3 devices using hardware cable. So they actually try to remove it. So you need to have a network failover. We already configured network failover IP addresses. Even though we configured there, we still have to mention to use those IP addresses. So we need to mention here network failover. And you need to include I just included when I was speaking to you. I just included these available devices as well. It would be here. You just need to bring it in the include members. So what are the devices you need to bring it on the same device group? Just add them. And automatic sync, if you prefer to sync automatically without any user intervention, so you could actually do it by checking it, but I prefer it not to, since I want to know if there is any configuration change. I need to see that. It needs to save for me here, configurations pending or changes pending, whatever. So I prefer that way, and I would like to do it that way. So I wouldn't choose that. And full sync, it is, so normally when you actually try to sync, it is actually incremental sync, similar like what you do in rsync in Linux, the small command that you run. So it will actually check the other unit, is there any configuration changes, and it will only update the files where the configurations are changed. Full sync would actually do not actually bother. It will actually push everything there to the other unit, or it will pull or push, and it will bring here. Yeah, I mean the pull or push, actually the concept itself version 10, but still sometimes it's nice to use that. But yeah, so I will leave only network failover, and I will not check auto sync or full sync. There's a way to do full sync manually as well, if you prefer to do it. So I'll just click finish. Yeah, I'm talking a lot. Maybe I'm talking quite faster as well. So if you notice, as soon as I add this, you see this unit actually becomes standby, and this unit is active. So one unit becomes standby. That's a good sign. So it is actually says waiting initial sync. So I do not have any configuration here. So I'll actually do a config sync. So if you want a config sync, you need to select which device. So generally in a production unit, you will actually choose, mostly it would be the active unit because the other unit will be offline. So you will actually choose that unit. You need to make sure that you choose that unit here. You can choose both, not the both, any one of them. You need to choose which unit has the latest configuration. So for instance, I will say this standby unit has the latest configuration. And then I want to push this configuration across the other device. So I'll just click on sync. So here you could see device, sync device to group. So it will actually sync the configuration from this device to all the devices in the same device group. For us, we have only another one device. So it will just push the configuration there. And you could actually get the configuration as well. This is like similar as pull. If you use this one, it will actually pull the configuration. And this small icon over here, this is override. This is what I mentioned about you. This overrides the incremental config sync. So it will actually push everything. Doesn't matter. It won't check actually whether the file change or anything. It won't check like incrementally. So this is the way how you manually full sync. So I would actually leave it as it is, and I will just click on sync. Okay, so it takes some time to update this information. Let's wait. Yep. Okay, so yeah, another one thing actually, in version 11.1 or 11.2, when you do this config sync or adding to device groups or adding the peer device, if you don't find the result immediately, actually give it like 2-3 minutes. Actually, sometimes it takes that much time to actually to retrieve information and to pass all the information. So give some time. But I haven't seen in 11.3 or 11.4. It's pretty quick. It didn't take me like 2-3 minutes or not even more than a minute to actually to retrieve the information of the other unit. So okay, both units are in config sync. Okay, we are happy. Now, so I'll just mention here what we did. We will just create a floating IP just to see whether the unit is actually failing over. So what we did, so okay. Okay, add peer unit. So where did we add? We went inside device thrust. Sorry, it's device management, device thrust, and we just added there. So device thrust, and now we went to peer list, and we just add and click on add, and then you put the IP address of the other unit, management IP address, and give the credentials, and that's it. Yeah, and the device. All right. Okay. So we got one unit active, and okay, let me log in. Yeah, sometimes actually when you do a config sync, the web GUI can kick you out, so it may log you out. So well, that's normal. Don't worry about it. And again, like when you actually do an override and put the configuration there, actually it pushes the configuration, the enter configuration there, whatever the floating configuration, and it will actually load everything. It doesn't actually check incremental as I mentioned before, and also it will load the configuration. It will reload the configuration. It will actually, if you remember TMSH loads its configuration, it would load the config. It will actually kind of execute that command. So, so actually, you may actually find the configurations are loading in LTM logs. You may find that. Okay, so let's actually test. How can we test? I don't have any pool numbers or anything. So what I will do is I'll just create a floating IP. Put external floating IP. What is the external IP range that I'm using? Let me see. Okay, this is the IP range I'm using. Okay, so I'll use 3 as a floating IP, and I'm doing it in unit 2. Yeah, I mean, I try to cover as much as I could. I mean, as much as I could remember. In Tabula default, you don't have to in production. You could actually put it allow to none. You don't want any other. Um, you don't want to open any ports that if you're unsure and if you don't need it. So you could. I will actually choose none actually. Yeah, and then just finish. So we. Okay, I haven't actually exactly created floating IP. I need to choose traffic group. All right. So I need to choose external VLAN. I'm thinking something else. And then in traffic group, you need to choose what traffic group. Okay, I will actually try to say a little bit about traffic group. So traffic group, this is a floating. So by default, every unit has this traffic group 1 by default. I will actually come to traffic group and finish. So this is a floating. This is how you configure a floating. You just put that in a floating, and if you actually use local only, it is a self IP, non-floating IP address. I'll just click on finish. Ooh, fine. So you can see actually it is actually traffic group 1, and it says changes pending. So let me try to config sync from this unit to the other unit. So click on the self device. If I actually click on that one, and if I actually put it, actually warns me as well. This unit has a recent configuration. So I'll just choose. You need to choose this device. If you choose the other way around, you will lose all the configuration. I have seen sometimes. I even actually previously did a few times, and it actually erased all the configuration. And it is very difficult for me to actually do it all over again. So, and I'll uncheck the overwrite, and I'll just click on sync to group. Sync in. Okay, the unit is in sync, and we should see the floating IP address there. Yeah. See, we see the floating IP in the external floating IP. So right now, this floating IP should be only listening on this unit. Yeah, I do not have any other external device to ping and test that. However, I just want to speak about traffic groups. So this device management, this is where you configure all the high availability properties. Most of them, I don't actually remember any other place where you configure, but in version 11.1 and 11.2, this traffic group is under network. So they moved it to device management. That makes sense because this traffic group is mostly related to high availability. This traffic group, as I mentioned, by default, you will have traffic group 1. So this is an active standby setup. But if you want to utilize both the units and you don't like to keep one unit idle and you just spend a lot of money and you want to utilize that, so what you can do is you can actually create another one traffic group here. Just put whatever name you like, and you could actually put whatever name you like, and even you don't need to actually mention failover order or anything. I'm not actually sure whether you need to add failover order. Let me actually check the other traffic group. If I see the failover order there, then we need to, yeah, you don't need it actually. It just shows in Uh, I think that is actually if you have more than say 2, 3 devices or 4, 5. I have mm, seen like 5, 6 devices as well in a single traffic group. So you could actually go here and put the traffic group. I'll just put traffic group 2 and put all the that's it actually. You don't do anything. And then what you do is when you actually create a actually let me create one. Why should I hesitate to do that? Yeah, traffic group 2 and auto failback. I would not recommend to enable auto failback in any traffic groups. Some people do it, but I don't like to do it. The reason is if one of the devices rebooting continuously for whatever reason, say that your auto failback preference is this device, and if this device is continuously rebooting, what happens? So this unit will go down, and the other unit will take over the traffic, and then once this unit become available, and the traffic will come here, and this unit will reboot again. So if it is a continuous reboot, it will cause some issues. So I do not bother to enable. I mean, I think it's negative. I don't see any advantage using auto failback that I could think of. Yeah. All right. So I'll just create this traffic group. All right. So we got one failover group, failover object that is a floating IP address, and it is actually saying to sync as well. So let me go there and sync. Yeah, okay. 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 It was showing red. I was thinking it was offline or something. Yeah. It's sometimes this icons and the colors are weird. It doesn't exactly show what it is, the status. So okay, so if we go there, we would actually see traffic group as well. So if I could actually create another one self IP, say in the same external VLAN. Sorry, not self IP, floating IP. I'll say floating IP 2, and I'll just give, excuse me. Yeah, I'll just give 144.4, and this time I use the traffic group 2 as let's see. So what happens is, so that unit is actually both the units actually right now actually both the traffic groups are active in this unit. So I will just go here and sync. Okay, great. Both units are in sync. Now I could go to traffic groups and go to the second traffic group, or whichever traffic group you like to go. And then you could actually say this particular traffic group to foster standby. You don't need to make the inter unit. You could actually make the inter unit go standby as well. You could actually, so it will actually do it for both the traffic groups. And you could also mention for just for this particular traffic group. If I choose foster standby and click on OK, so it is actually, if you see, it actually says this traffic group is actually in the other unit. So if you see, actually both units are active now. Let's check traffic. Yeah. So traffic group 2 actually in 11 this unit current device, but the next device is this one. So if this fails, it will go. So if you have actually 3-4 units, actually here you could actually see what is the next unit which will take over this traffic if anything fails. Yeah, and you could actually mention that in the order as well. And there are many things actually. HA group as well, that would actually conflict with manual failovers. So I would actually say not to use HA failover unless you want very quick failover need to be happen. And if you enable it, do not bother to do manual failovers, and so the system will decide which unit will become active and standby using some HA score. I think that I'm giving too much information. You might have been already confused. Okay, so this traffic group is just an add-on, so you could just leave it with the floating IP addresses that we configured. I mean, yeah, added peer device. Yeah, we just added, and yeah, and then what we did, add device group. Add add all devices from the available. Yeah, add all devices in all devices in the device group. I mean, mostly in most situations you need to add all the devices. Yeah, and yeah, network failover, it's a must. And hardware failover cable, big note to it. Yeah. So you don't actually need, and we actually saw something about traffic group. So that way you could actually have multiple traffic groups. Yeah. So if you have multiple traffic groups, it's not only for floating IP. And I think you already know that you could actually create. I mean, whatever objects you create, the floating objects, you could actually mention what traffic group it needs to use. I think we are in basics. Let me check. No, I'm sorry. That you would actually find not here when you create the virtual server, but after you create the virtual server, you will see the virtual address list. So this is where you could actually create. You could actually choose which traffic group this particular virtual server need to listen. One of the reasons is actually a single virtual. You can have multiple virtual servers on the same IP, but theoretically you cannot actually, as well as technically, you cannot actually have a single IP, two virtual servers using a same IP on two traffic groups. So that is the reason actually they make us choose whatever traffic group for that particular IP address, not for individual virtual servers. So for a particular IP address, you could actually use this traffic group or that traffic group, so you could actually use that way. All right, I think that I covered pretty much everything. Yeah, that's all. If you have any question, I mean, I'm sure that I might have missed many things. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment in my website. In that particular video section, I'll put that under YouTube video as well. the link, so you could just go there and leave a comment, and I will get back to you. Thanks for watching the video. You have a great day.